How to build emotional connection on a date. Building emotional connections is at the heart of successful dating. Whether you're seeking a long-term relationship or looking to deepen a connection with someone new, forming an emotional bond can pave the way for meaningful, lasting relationships. Emotional connection doesn't just involve talking about surface-level topics. It requires deeper understanding, empathy, and engagement. In this video, we'll explore how to foster emotional connections on a date using practical insights, backed by psychology and real-life examples. Why emotional connection matters. Emotional connections are what make relationships meaningful. Without emotional intimacy, relationships can feel empty or shallow, often leading to disinterest or lack of growth. On a date, you're not just getting to know someone's interests or background, you're trying to connect on a deeper emotional level. This bond sets the stage for trust, comfort, and the feeling that someone genuinely understands and appreciates who you are. Many people view physical attraction or shared interests as the primary building blocks of a relationship, but emotional intimacy is what keeps people together. It's the difference between fleeting attraction and long-term compatibility. Building emotional connection on a date allows you to understand the person at their core, ensuring you both feel safe, understood, and appreciated. Empathy. The foundation of emotional connection. Empathy is one of the most important elements in establishing an emotional connection. However, as Dr. Orion Taraban explains in his work, empathy is not about imagining yourself in the other person's situation and thinking about how you would feel. People respond to situations in unique ways. Empathy involves understanding and connecting with someone's emotions by relating them to a similar emotional experience of your own. For example, let's say your date shares a personal story about losing a loved one. Instead of trying to relate by saying something like, "I know how you feel," you can try to recall a time when you experienced a loss in your own life. While the circumstances may be different, the underlying emotional experience of loss is universal. By tapping into your own emotions and understanding what your date might be feeling, you can form a deeper emotional bond. Example in practice. Imagine you're on a date, and your partner mentions that they've recently moved to a new city and are feeling lonely. Instead of responding with advice or minimizing the situation, consider how you felt the last time you were in an unfamiliar environment, unsure of who to turn to. A response like, "I remember feeling isolated when I first started a new job in a different city, and it was tough to navigate," demonstrates that you've understood their emotions and can empathize with their situation. How to use empathy on a date. Listen deeply. When your date is talking, make a conscious effort to listen fully, not just to their words but to their emotional undertone. Are they feeling excited, anxious, or uncertain about what they're saying? Engage with their emotions rather than just responding to the surface-level content of the conversation. Use open-ended questions. Ask questions that invite your date to express themselves more fully. For example, "How did that make you feel?" Or "What was the hardest part for you?" These questions not only show that you're interested but also encourage them to explore their emotions more deeply. Validate their feelings. Once you understand their emotions, validate them by saying something like, "I can imagine that must have been really difficult for you," or "It sounds like you're really passionate about this." Validation shows that you've heard and accepted their feelings, which is key to building trust and intimacy. Attainability and vulnerability in dating. Balance is important. As Casey Zander discusses, people are attracted to partners who offer a degree of attainability, someone who is not entirely distant, but not completely available either. The key is to be approachable while still maintaining some level of mystery and independence. However, emotional connection is not about playing games or manipulating someone's feelings. It's about finding a balance between being open and available while also retaining your individuality and self-worth. Sharing personal experiences and being vulnerable can be a powerful way to build emotional connections, as it demonstrates trust and authenticity. But there's a fine line between being emotionally available and overwhelming someone with too much personal information too soon. Example in practice. If you're on a date and the conversation turns personal, it's okay to share a vulnerable story or something that matters to you. For example, If your date asks about your family and you have a complicated relationship with them, you could say, "It's been difficult, and I'm working through it." This reveals a layer of your emotional world without overwhelming your date with every detail. On the other hand, oversharing too early, such as diving into deep personal traumas on a first date, might cause discomfort and make the other person feel like the emotional burden is too much. Emotional connection should unfold naturally over time, as both parties feel more comfortable with each other. How to use attainability and vulnerability on a date. Share your passions and experiences. Instead of keeping conversations strictly light, share your dreams, ambitions, or past challenges. This invites your date to see you as a whole person, rather than just someone engaging in small talk. Be a good listener. When your date opens up about something meaningful, don't try to fix their problems or offer unsolicited advice. Often, simply being present and validating their experience is enough to foster emotional intimacy. Balance openness with patience. It's tempting to overshare or overanalyze early on in a relationship, but emotional connection grows best over time. Offer glimpses of your vulnerable side without feeling the need to pour out everything immediately. Focus on emotional cues, not just words. Dr. Orion Taraban stresses that ideas often divide people, while emotions unite them. This is particularly important when building an emotional connection on a date. Too often, people focus on the literal meaning of their date's words, rather than the emotional cues behind them. For instance, someone might share an anecdote about their stressful day at work. The literal meaning might seem mundane, but the emotional undercurrent might reveal feelings of frustration, inadequacy, or anxiety. By tuning into these emotional cues, you can engage with the deeper layers of their experience. Example in practice. If your date mentions feeling overwhelmed at work, don't simply reply with, "Yeah, work is tough." Instead, probe deeper with an empathetic response like, "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot on your shoulders recently. How do you manage it all?" This shows you're attuned to the emotional reality behind the words. How to focus on emotional cues on a date. Watch body language. Nonverbal cues like facial expressions, tone of voice, and posture can tell you more about your date's emotional state than their words alone. If their words say one thing, but their body language says another, trust the emotional cues. Ask deeper questions. When your date shares something, ask follow-up questions that dive deeper into their emotional experience. For example, if they mention a family issue, you could ask, "How did that make you feel?" This encourages them to open up emotionally. Reflect emotions back. If your date expresses frustration, sadness, or joy, reflect those emotions back in your response. For example, "It sounds like that was a really frustrating situation for you." This shows that you're not just listening, but actively engaging with their emotions. Shared vulnerabilities and creating trust. Another key aspect of forming emotional connections is building trust. Sharing vulnerabilities, both big and small, helps build trust between two people. Trust is the bedrock of emotional connection because it allows both partners to feel safe and comfortable sharing their true selves. Building trust doesn't mean you have to immediately share your deepest fears or darkest secrets. It's about being consistent, honest, and authentic in how you present yourself. When both people feel secure in the emotional space they've created, the connection will naturally deepen. Example in practice. On a date, trust can be built through small actions, such as following through on your word or showing genuine interest in your date's feelings and thoughts. For instance, if you promise to call after the date, do so. Small actions over time build the foundation for emotional intimacy. How to build trust on a date. Be authentic. Don't pretend to be someone you're not in order to impress your date. Authenticity breeds trust, as both people feel like they are getting to know the real person. Follow through on commitments. If you make plans or promises, keep them. This shows that you're reliable and trustworthy, which is essential for building emotional intimacy. Share gradually. Trust takes time to build. As the relationship progresses, share more of your emotional world, but allow the connection to develop naturally without rushing it. The power of organic chemistry. As Casey Zander points out, chemistry between two people needs to feel organic. It's not about using tactics or pretending to be someone you're not. Organic chemistry happens when both people can relax and be themselves without trying to force a connection. On a date, this might mean allowing moments of silence to happen naturally or not feeling pressured to fill every moment with conversation. When you're both comfortable with each other, there's a natural flow of interaction, and that ease of connection deepens the emotional bond. Example in practice. Let's say you're on a date, and there's a lull in the conversation. Instead of scrambling to fill the silence, lean into it and let it feel natural. Allow your date to guide the conversation forward, and trust that the emotional connection doesn't need to be forced. How to foster organic chemistry on a date. Be present. Instead of worrying about how you're being perceived, focus on the present moment and enjoy the interaction. When you're fully engaged with your date, the connection will feel more genuine and organic. Allow space for silence. Don't rush to fill every quiet moment with chatter. Allowing moments of silence creates a natural rhythm and allows both people to relax. Don't force the connection. Chemistry happens naturally when both people are comfortable being themselves. If you find yourself trying too hard to impress or connect, take a step back and let the conversation flow naturally. Emotional connection is the key to long-lasting relationships. Building emotional connection on a date is a powerful way to lay the foundation for a lasting, meaningful relationship. By practicing empathy, embracing vulnerability, focusing on emotional cues, building trust, and allowing for organic chemistry, you can foster a deep emotional bond with your partner. Dating is more than just finding someone with similar interests or physical attraction. True connection comes from engaging with another person on an emotional level. By using the tips outlined in this article, you can build stronger, more meaningful connections on your dates, paving the way for deeper relationships in the future.